All right. Hey, this is what real entrepreneurship looks like: high risk, high responsibility, and zero room for error. Dino DePasquale isn't just running a business, he's coordinating people, equipment, and millions of dollars of material in real time. From cranes in the sky to steel in the ground, every move matters. Today on the Go for CEO channel, we go inside the mindset, the discipline, and the leadership it takes to build in one of the most toughest industries there is out there. Dino, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, John. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, man, you're a local Illinois business, so I'm always super excited to have these businesses on because it's prideful, right? We're from Illinois, awesome backgrounds and hardworking people, blue collar, and that intro was really kind of impactful. Hopefully for you, Go for Show channel, people that are viewing this interview, you're going to learn a ton from Dino, and this industry is no joke. So Dino, we'd love to start with, kind of the background. Were you in the industry before you started the business? Were you an apprentice of some sort? Give us a little bit of that backstory and we'll go from there.
Sure, John. Yeah. So I come from three generations of ironworkers. It's kind of born into the business per se. My dad had a small business for many years. I started working with my dad early on. Actually, was working with him during high school in the summers. I'd go work for him full time. But as soon as we graduated, I started working. I started working full time for Merrill Man. Uh, did that. My uncle also had a business too, so I'd work for both of them. Both of them were old school mentality, just hard working, blue collar type of guys. So they demanded a lot, expected a lot. So I was kind of thrown into the fire and thrown into becoming a great iron worker and a hard worker, because I didn't have any other choice. That's my uncle was especially hard on us. It's just push, push, push. So, um, but I actually worked for my dad for about 10 years. Um, Learned every facet of the business. Became a foreman early on, so you kind of got into a leadership role, um, you know, early on in my career. Um, and I would mostly have older guys working underneath me. And as you could imagine, a young guy, I was a damn good iron worker though, I learned the business. I knew a ton about the business. Um, but it wasn't easy to earn their respect. So, but the way I did earn their respect is, I was still working foreman back then, and and I could outwork most of those guys. So that was kind of the way I earned their respect, is they appreciated that I was actually, a hard worker. I took it serious. I was dedicated, and and it got me through with those guys. So,
Well,
um,
it's dangerous,
well,
right? I mean, if you're not working hard, attentive, looking at every decision that you're making with a precise lens of like, hey, man, I can't mess up. I got to be on point. I got to know what I'm doing. I think other people respect that, especially when they're of that industry and they know the seriousness of what you're doing. So, really cool experiences. When you talk about respect and trust, you know, how did you find that when you were working on the actual, projects and stuff like that? Were you starting to think like, hey, if I can do the actual work, that translates into respect? Or did you also obviously have to guide them in some of the ways that they were working and show coaching them per se, or working on certain deals together and showing them, hey, maybe you had a little bit more understanding of how to do a certain project or tool or use a certain tool?
yeah. So I number one, I'm probably one of the hardest working people that I know. Number one, and number two, I'm also a perfectionist. So when I do something, I am 1,000% in it, and I I put my everything into it. So when it comes to ironworking, like that's my craft. So even though I was young and younger than a lot of these guys, you know, very quickly, if let's say it was some newer guys that didn't really know me or know my background or whatever, but very quickly they would realize that I knew what I was doing, and I had a passion for what I was doing, and I think it showed. I think when you truly do have a passion for something, you truly are fully in it and committed to it, that just resonates with people, and I think that's pretty much what earned the respect from those guys.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't spend the time, right? You were an apprentice per se of your uncle. He drove you hard, right? Your dad, being in the business, you kind of had it in the bloodline, but you also, created your own pathway, right? And we all do. So that's kind of the cool story about it. And learning it from an experience where you did have some leadership roles that you needed to kind of, you know, learn or grow into. It's kind of cool that you build your muscles of leadership in that way. What are two things that I guess you would say to the audience that you learned pretty quickly about leadership? Was it like you needed to be the first one in, last one out? Was it, you needed to know your things better than everybody else? Like, what were some of the things that you kind of picked up on pretty quickly that helped you to become a good leader?
Yeah, you got to lead by example. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. I was always the first one in, the last one out. I mean, always. And it wasn't just because I wanted to prove something. It was because I cared that much and I wanted to be, as prepared as I could possibly be. And the only way to do that would be to show up early and do the things that it took, all the little things to get prepared. So starting at 7 a.m. when we're ready to hit the clock, I mean, I already have my list made. I know the plan for the day. I could stay 3 steps ahead of the game plan, all day long, and I think it kind of goes back to comparing it to like a NFL quarterback, Tom Brady, they're just always one step ahead of the defense, So I mean that's kind of my industry. If the good foremen or the good leaders are are thinking 2-3 steps ahead and kind of foreshadowing what's to come. So I think that's key, to being a great leader.
No, I love it. You made me think of and I don't know if it's specifically worded this way in your industry, but change orders, right? My buddies in construction, they always tell me about like, hey man, you got to be on top of these, subcontractors and change orders and making sure that they're really telling you what they need to tell you. So I would, I guess, correlate that to the leadership position you were in. You needed to be a step ahead or two to make sure that they weren't messing with you, right? They weren't testing you, or they maybe have tested you, but you were already ready for the challenge. So I love it. I love it. So how long did it take really? I mean, obviously you saw your uncle entrepreneurship, your father being, his own man. When was that turning point for you of saying to yourself, okay, hey, look, I've learned a ton. Maybe there isn't a takeover situation here because my uncle and my dad might be going and work until they're 100. Like, what was the thought for you, or did you take over? I'm not really sure of the story, but love to, find out about that.
Yeah, so we took over my dad's business. We would go work for my uncle just if my dad was slow. So that was just kind of
Mm,
sporadic here and there. It was kind of a mix between both, but I learned from both. Um, but yeah, my dad, so we basically started running the show. And my dad started showing up less and less because he knew eventually we could handle it. So me and my brother, we're still partners today in our businesses. But we were both working for him. So he knew that, he could trust us. Jobs could run smoothly with him not around, So he started, coming around less and less as time went on. And we kind of the last couple of years, we pretty much ran the show entirely. He'd still be around and stick his nose in here and there or whatever. But my dad's the type that a little bit different from some other dads. My dad's the type that is just throws you to the wolves. And I'm not sure if there's times where he even thought we could fully handle it or not, but he was the type that would be willing to take the risk and just be like, well, If they can't don't know what they're doing, they're going to figure it out type of thing. So, and I think that really helped, pave the way for me. I mean, when you get thrown into situations, whether you're ready for them or not, it makes you grow up real fast. It makes you, you know, learn really fastly and quickly and adapt. And I think that's part of being a business owner and a leader, right? Is being able to adapt and overcome uncertainty. So I learned that really early on. Um, but fast forward to today, now I've been in the business for 31 years,
Hmm.
a business owner for 21 years. We're a AISC certified steel erector. We also own a crane rental division, which is a separate company, but they kind of lend themselves to each other. Um, but here's the part that really kind of made me who I am today. In 2008, as we all know, we had the real estate crash, and
Mhm.
it was a few years later in 2010 where it started hitting construction. Uh, as you can recall, people were afraid. Barely anybody was building back then, and there's very, very few jobs available. So it was a struggle. We were owed about 500,000 at the time, and we ended up collecting 50 cents on the dollar, and it took us about 2 years to collect that money. We took the high road and ended up paying all our vendors off. It took many years. We went on payment plans, but we took the high road and paid all our vendors off. Some of our larger competitors, I won't name any names, but actually filed bankruptcy
Mm.
and didn't pay their vendors. But maybe today I would do some things differently. And for the best financial move, maybe filing bankruptcy was the right move. But we took the high road, we fought our way through it, and we paid every penny that we owed eventually. So I could, hold my head high and sleep good at night knowing that we did that. But um, well, so it was rough. I mean, I remember it got so bad that there was a little pizza place by the house, and on Wednesdays they would have $5 pizzas. I'd buy two pizzas and literally eat pizza for the whole week, and that's what I had to do to get by. That's how bad
Mm.
it got. Um, but we survived. We hung on, and we turned things around, and we built things back up. And fast forward today, we have an amazing team. We got amazing customers, and we have a thriving business. So, but that's kind of what shaped who I am and how I got to where I'm at today. So going through that and going through those rough times and the ups and downs of the industry and just the fact that it's just such a demanding industry. Construction in general is tough. General contractors are demanding more and more of us. The paperwork is getting, um, there's more paperwork, there's more red tape. Um, they just expect more out of you. The architects want to do less for you. You mentioned change orders. We could probably do an 8-hour segment just on change orders alone. But it's just a real tough industry, and my industry and in the steel business, steel erection is one of the most dangerous industries in the country and the world, really. So you layer in just this a tough business, construction tough business, and then being in one of the most dangerous industries, and it's tough. So that's why today, my newest venture is teaching, newer business owners or, owners of, between 1 million and 5 million, that are still, working in the field. Maybe they're still in the field or, definitely just still working in the company and not spending the time to work on the company. Um, I'm helping those guys, build the systems and the processes to get themselves out of the field, out of working in the business, and being able to do the things they need to grow the business.
I love it. I love it. And I want to go deeper into that point, but I don't want to also not give the audience background on that tough time, right? Because I could feel the energy in your body through the screen here. I could understand kind of the inflection of your voice, and to share that raw story of buying a couple pizzas for $10 and eating them for a week is a real entrepreneurship story, right? It's a real journey, and a lot of people, don't realize that, if you would have quit, if you would have gone bankrupt, if you would have, just, laid off the pedal to the metal, maybe there was some solace, right? Some people would have said, "Oh, it's okay, Dino," right? But you push through and look at where you're at now, and now you're teaching, like you're the train the trainer type guy, right? Along with the experiences that you've had. So part of that, downside of the business that happened, what were some of the dynamics so that we can get a little bit kind of meatier in that? You built your business, and share with us a little bit of kind of what that day to day looks like of what you actually do with steel erection. Because I will tell you, I could hardly do a ceiling fan in my house, so I'm not construction guy. I'm definitely a money guy, a thought leader. This type of stuff I enjoy. But I've always been amazed. I'll take my three daughters, and we'll go downtown and be like, man, look at this sky braid. Like, I don't even understand how would they get the steel? Like, how do they connect it, and where does the electric go? So can you give us a little bit of that sense, and then go back to that tough time of what actually happened in the industry that, held the whole industry back? So
Yeah, I mean, as you know, construction industry is just reciprocal. It goes up and down with the economy. And when things hit, when things hit hard, we started out in 2000, between 2005 2006. So we had about a 5 year head start before. Well, things started getting bad about 2009 for us. Really started getting rocky. 2010 is when like the bottom fell off and just, it just nosedived. There's just no jobs out there, right? So here we are. Um, we're learning our path, right? The first 5 years, I mean, let's face it, the first 5 years, most companies don't even survive. Um,
mhm.
you know, what's the percentage that, a company actually hit $1 million, right? It's such a low percentage, let alone surviving. Oh, forgive me, my lights turns off here. There we go. Um, yeah, so we really didn't have the traction that we would have liked to have, right? And you coming from the banking background, we didn't, we had small credit lines built up. We didn't have large enough credit lines built up that would have kind of really helped us get through that recession, right? Um, and the fact that we weren't fully prepared um, for what was to come, and nobody saw it coming, but it hit us, it hit us so hard, and we had to fight so hard to get out of it that it made me reshape the way I ran my business and the way I looked at things, right? Obviously, there's some things that come into perspective, and you learn real quick the mistakes that you made, right? And that's when I started, from that point on, that's when I started building systems and cloning myself and just just doing the things that did to build the protections, right? We started really working hard on making sure our financials were in line and knowing our numbers and working on there's a lot of companies out there that they don't even know if they're profitable on that job or not, right? Especially
Mhm.
the guys. So I'll backtrack a little bit. Early on when we're just hustling, we're grinding, and we're just in the thick of things, we're almost too busy to even if we wanted to, we didn't have time to go back and look at our numbers. We're like, we kind of had the thought process, well, it is what it is. Our numbers are our numbers, whether we lost money or made money, we got to forge ahead and we got work to do, and we were doing the estimating and we were running jobs and we were, doing the payroll and doing all these things, every facet of the company. Um, and, didn't take the time to look at the numbers and stuff like that, but you really can't grow unless you know where your numbers are at and what jobs are the jobs that are the good jobs for you, right? And you might have an idea, okay, these seems like this is our bread and butter jobs. This is what fits our mold well, but you don't really know till you start analyzing, each job and running profit reports on each job. So the day I started doing that is the day that everything clicked for me. So I expanded upon that by creating a job bidding system. So I set like a criteria of 10 different criteria. I knew what my bread and butter job was, price wise, margin wise and stuff like that, where we wanted to be and financially wise. And we identified what our bread and butter jobs really were, on paper from real numbers. And then we had other criteria that we built in there, like, the customer evaluation was a big part. Are they a good customer, a good paying customer? Are they good at executing change orders? Um, do they run their job smoothly? Things like that. The territory, we're a union company, so that we have kind of union territories that we got to deal with, and there's some good, some bad, based on who the business agent is, or if we have to get guys from the union hall or permit, or if we could go with our bread and butter guys type of thing. So we got all this criteria, and before we waste our time, bidding jobs, we grade a job using the criteria, and we know if it's the right job for us. And if we need work, if we're hurting for work and we need work and it doesn't score well, we could still bid that job, but we got to layer in the protections, right? And we got to build in a little extra financial, buffer in there so if we do land that job, it's still going to be worth our while. So I think that was the kind of the game changer for us. Um, but I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of how steel erection goes and how these projects go. I'll give you a little bit idea of so we're primarily a installer. So we put up, we show up to the job, a steel gets delivered. If it's a smaller job, it could be, one or two truckloads of steel. It's a bigger job, it could be, days and days of truckloads. We could have, 30 trucks to unload. And our crews show up, our cranes show up, and we unload the trucks, we shake out the steel, we lay it out nicely, and then we get to work and we just start hanging iron, putting the columns up, the beams up, the bar joists, the metal decking. And you probably have drove past job sites before where you'll see a site taking shape, the construction fence will go up and they'll do the site work, the groundwork, earthwork and everything, pour the foundations, and then we're the next in line to come in. And steel goes up pretty quick. I mean, we could put up, if it's bigger iron, 50 pieces a day. If it's smaller iron, we could put up, 100 to 150 pieces a day. So,
Wow.
you could drive by a job site and there'll be nothing coming out of the ground. And a day or two later, you got a two-story building that's already like stood up, so it goes fast. But so I run, uh, we have about 8 to 10 crews that we run. Uh, and like I said, I got a pretty strong team and we've been doing this a long time and it's kind of how the flow goes.
I love it. Love it. I'm just imagining close to here in Naperville, we have a data center that just went up with and yeah, it was a flat ground and all of a sudden boom, it's like it was just up. It was crazy. And I'm interested in understanding, right? So just to get a little bit more nitty gritty, just for our audience that, likes to kind of get into the minutia of sometimes. Um, you said you're in that second or third phase. So that ground gets developed, or I guess the site, the electrical, those things. Is everything in the ground when you think about, from a layman perspective? Like, is everything built in the ground so that when you guys come, you're putting it in holes, or like, can you give us a little bit of that sense of what it actually feels like to, I guess start, the building blocks of that?
Sure. So there's two types of projects. We're talking about groundwork. Some have basements and some do not.
Okay.
So if you have a basement, our first level of steel. So if you have a basement, they just like at your home, they pour the foundation, they pour the basement foundation walls. So basically they'll dig down, 10 feet or 15 feet, 20 feet, whatever the depth of the basement is. And then it's all concrete walls, right? surrounding the whole basement. And then inside that basement, like 10 feet below ground level or whatever, they pour additional footings where the columns would go. So, and that's all. So we show up to the job, all that concrete's in, ready to go. If there's
Mm,
no basement, then they'll just pour the footings for our columns. So if there's 30 columns on the project, then they pour 30 footings. It's like a 4 foot by 4 foot block of concrete that goes, anywhere between 4 to 8 feet in the ground, depending on how the ground conditions are, the soil conditions are, and what the civil engineer calls for. But yeah, so all that concrete work is done. So we come in, and then they pour anchor bolts into the concrete piers. So we have 4 anchor bolt rods that are sticking up. We drop our columns on the rods, put the nuts and washers on, and start hanging the iron from there.
I love it. Right. Obviously, I'm sure you've done from the smallest of jobs to the biggest of jobs. What's kind of the highest job you've ever done as far as height?
Well, I've worked on some really tall structures. I mean, I worked on at the sickle plant in Joliet. I was up, 280 feet on a tower. I was one of the connectors up there connecting. So, um, yeah, I told you I work for my dad and my uncle, but we also work for a few other companies. I got a kind of a good story as far as the types of jobs we do or whatever, and some of the projects we've done. So when Soldier Field was going through their renovation where they turned it into a spaceship, right?
Hmm.
Um, God, that was back in how long ago was that? 2008. That was like 23 years ago, I believe now.
Yeah.
But I worked for a company, a big large steel erector that was doing the renovation, and I actually worked on the Soldier Field project. Like I said, like 23 years ago. Come full circle today, my company just did a renovation. So when they originally did the renovation, the one of the concourse levels on the west side, they never built the concourse wide enough to support the amount of people that were coming down, at halftime, and it really restricted the flow of traffic. So you couldn't come down at halftime and get yourself a beer, a hot dog, whatever the case, and make it back to your seat in time. Like it was just too congested, right? So they always
Mm.
wanted to widen the concourse and open that up. And for some reason they never did it until now. I mean, now that the Bears might not even be there anymore, and
Yeah.
they finally move forward with the renovation. So we did the structural steel and metal decking, and we did some miscellaneous work. We did a stair and some metal railing and stuff like that to expand the concourse level for the stadium. So we just completed that project last year. But
That's awesome.
you mentioned data centers. We're actually doing a data center in Lisle
Mm.
currently. And that started off as we kind of just were doing some infrastructure for some piping that they had. So what started as like $100,000 project, and then they had a second project, and what it is, it's just a big, large open warehouse, and they keep adding data center tenants. So as they get new tenants, they need more infrastructure built up. So we just kept getting snowballing into more projects, all on the same site. And now we just had our largest phase, which I think we're on phase 7 now, but it's 400 tons. They're putting a new mezzanine in there and some new equipment with rooftop, but 400 tons worth of steel on this latest project for this data center here.
Wow. And just out of curiosity, materials wise, is there sourcing from all around the world? Is there a certain country that brings in that steel mostly, or are we mostly American based? Like, out of curiosity, I guess, I'm thinking like, where does all this stuff come from and how do you
So
source it?
it's a mix. Well, so we get our steels from the mills. We
Mm,
have, so you got your large mills and they're the ones that source the steel from. Some of
Mm,
it's from the US, some of it's from China, but the mill's the main source. And then the mill has, smaller steel houses, supply houses that are kind of more centrally located. Um, so it's a mix. Like at times you order directly from the mill, other times you'll order from a more local supplier. And it kind of depends on what your needs are and what the availability is. But you really got to get creative. Like right now with all the data centers going on, there's some type of large industrial project that's going on. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but they required 130,000 tons of steel. I think
wow.
it started out at like 95,000 tons and went up to 130,000 tons of steel for just one individual project. Now, on top of that, you got all these data centers that are going on, and those data centers are anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 plus tons per data center. Um, but it's actually caused a kind of a roadblock in the supply chain.
Hmm.
So the mill has rolling schedules where they'll roll the beams in columns. And right now the rolling schedules are pushed out to all the way till September. So on some of these beam sizes. So if somebody wants to build a building right now, they might not even be able to get steel ordered until September, let alone
Mm.
then you got to bring it in house and fabricate it, and that could take, 6 weeks to, 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks possibly, somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks. So you're looking at pretty long lead times right now for materials based on the environment.
And just another kind of rabbit hole one, is there different sizes? Obviously, I'm imagining larger pieces, smaller pieces, different projects, certain specs on certain things. But could you go through, I guess, do you have to inventory anything, or is your business kind of a pass through? Once you get the project, you win the bid, you make the orders, and you don't necessarily need to, inventory many things.
Yeah, so we're primarily an install only company. So we don't directly handle material. However, throughout the years, I built many relationships with general contractors, owners, developers,
Mhm.
where now 20, 30% of the time we'll take on the full package. And
Mm.
I'll turn around, I'll subcontract out the fabrication end of it. So I still don't, even though I have the contract to procure the steel, I don't actually handle the steel myself. I sub it out to a fabricator. They order the steel. They, you know, make the steel, fabricate it in their shop, and then they'll deliver it out to the sites. And then my crews will come, to the site and put the steel out.
Mm. Okay.
But yeah, you're talking about different sizes and shapes. So, if let's just compare like a strip mall, right? So you got like a typical strip mall that you'll find in any, in Naperville, there's a ton of them, right? Where you'll have a Starbucks and a Chipotle and maybe one or two more stores all in the same strip mall. If those require steel, that's all small, either bar joists or beams, or a combination of both. And it's just real light stuff. Like the heaviest beam on that job would probably be, maybe 1,200 pounds, right? 1,200, 1,500 pounds. Most of it's going to be, 500, 800 pounds, like for beams. You go to like a data center and you got beams that, could be, you know, 30,000 pounds and 50,000 pounds a piece. I mean, that's the difference you're talking. You're talking an average of 900 pounds to, an average of, 5 or 6,000 pounds and pieces that weigh, upwards of 50,000 pounds, So it's
Wow.
a vast difference, depending on which type of project you're dealing with.
So is your biggest need more of obviously operators, individuals that know how to run the site, but also equipment? Are you handling a lot of equipment, to take that smaller piece, maybe a different way of doing it, but the bigger piece is larger cranes, larger, mobility ways to move the projects or the materials and everything?
Sure. Yeah, you got
Okay.
um So as far as unloading, we're primarily either using crane or we're using lulls, which are also called telehandlers. So that's
Mm,
basically a telescopic forklift is what that is. So you could unload with either or, but yeah, as far as cranes go, you got to spec the job for the weight. You kind of analyze, what type of weight you're looking for, and so you look at the logistics of the site, right? And you decide where you're going to be able to stage your crane, park your crane, where you're going to stage your trucks, and where you're going to lay out your steel. So you gotta have your layout area, your trucking, and your crane area. And then you got to kind of map out, what is my longest distance, what's the furthest piece I got and the heaviest piece I got. So you take basically what your most critical and long reaches with the crane, and that's how you size the crane, right? That's how you determine what size crane you need. And you obviously got to factor in when you're unloading trucks and you're handling bundles of beams and how heavy those bundles of beams may be. And then we have to create a lift plan, which is very detailed and thorough. And there's a lot of components that go into that, but all the safety factors go in. You look at the crane charts and the capacity of the crane, what the crane could handle. And like I said, you figure out your worst case scenario, and then that's how you size the crane, and that's how draw up your lift plan to do things safely and make sure that everything's handled in a safe manner and you got the proper rigging. We have all certified riggers, certified signalmen. My crews are all, certified welders. Um, and as I said, we're an AISC certified company, so that means that we're held to a higher standard, right? So
hmm.
there's projects out there where you can't do the project unless you're AISC certified. So that means you have to have a quality control program. So we have to do things like um, evaluate our vendors, evaluate our suppliers, even even from who we're buying our welding rods to. We got to evaluate all those companies and basically grade them. And then, there's just so many layers. We have like welding procedures, bolting procedures, specific paperwork procedures. And we also get audited every year. In order to keep your certification, you get like a full 2-day audit. One day is 8 hours in the office, and basically they scrutinize your whole process from A to Z, your whole quality control program, and making sure you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. If they ask you, hey, show me this job or show me that job, and then they might ask for specific paperwork. That's the AISC requirement for that project, and you better have it available for them. So you can't just go through the motions and just try to do a dog and pony show just to get through it. You really have to run a good operation, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to become certified is I made a determination a long time ago. I want to run my company the right way, and this is
Hmm.
just another layer that not only gives us more opportunity, but forces us to do things the right way, and holds us to a higher standard.
Well, you mentioned earlier, and this is a big learning lesson, Go Pursue Community. And if you're just listening to Dino's story, what a great, great journey he's had. But there was a point that, failure could have been a reality, right? Very, very close to disaster. But he took a time, and I'll just reference my book. I talk about the first chapter in anything that you're doing is assessing where you're at. And in 2010, you took a step back, man. You really said to yourself, man, am I running a business or am I running a shop that I'm committed to having to be in it all the time and not having any systems? And it sounded like, you assessed that part, you got yourself systematized, and now then you also added layers of credibility with this AISC certification and understanding like, hey, if I'm going to go to the next level, if I'm going to play with the big boys, and build your brand to that level, you did the right moves. And it's really cool that you were accountable to yourself. You looked in the mirror and said, hey, man, let's go take action. And look, 2026, man, 15, 16 years later, you guys are doing many different projects from small to big, in different ways. I would ask you, what were some of the ways that you identified the right people? Because a lot of people that we have on the Go for Show channel, and like I said, we interview from small to medium-sized business owners. But there are times that we get stuck, right? As a former entrepreneur myself, before commercial banking, I got to a point where I said, okay, well, hey, I need this type of leader in this position so that I could work on the business instead of in the business. What were some of the ways that you determined that? Because in your industry, man, it can't be easy to find someone that knows like this level of job performance, right? You got to have some hours because there's got to be some sort of learning time. So, did you start to pluck talent from different companies? Did you start to develop them within your own company? What were some of those strategies for you?
Yeah, so John, me and my brother kid often now about, yeah, it's funny how you look back at your early days of owning a business, right? And you're like, man, like I can't believe we did what we did for so long, right? And you could joke about it, right? Because you've lived it, you earned your keep or whatever, and but it's funny. So and it goes back to people too. Like we joke around like, man, I can't believe we used to do all this ourselves, and we didn't have a team, and we would be we were afraid to hire anybody. You know how it is. I mean, when you just don't know and you think nobody could do it as good as you just
Hmm.
live in fear, right? You run your company really out of fear. Like I'm afraid to hire somebody. Like what's going to happen if I hire somebody? How am I going to train them? I don't even know how to train them. Like they're never going to be able to do the job as good as me, right? We all have these thoughts, right? I mean, every owner has gone through this. But my secret to success is not going out and finding top tier talent, not going and poaching people from other companies, but our secret sauce is developing people from within or developing people that may not be as experienced, but we know that they have the right, personality, integrity. We would like to find passionate people, people that are going to be, committed and loyal. So we look for those personality traits, and that's what's most important to us, right? If I could take, and I think that's the hardest to find, is what I found is to really, I could find a great iron worker, I could find a great project manager
Hmm.
that comes with a ton of experience, but they also come with their own set of headaches. They might think that they know it all. They might think that their way is the right way, or they might just come with a bad attitude because they just they have an ego, or so it's hard to find that perfect fit. And one thing that we just started getting better at just in recent years was really building the business around our culture, right? We have such a great team that now our culture is kind of really um, is so important to us that we we won't bring the wrong person in that's gonna, and we have brought people in that just didn't fit in the culture and just didn't fit with our team, and we had to get rid of those people. Some of them were good talented people, but they just they didn't fit the culture, and they didn't fit they weren't just a good teammate. And so that's number one, is we find those people with the right personality traits and the right the right mindset coming in, and then we develop them. So, and that's what I spent many years on, like I said, cloning myself and creating like great systems and great processes, where now I could hire somebody and I could develop them pretty rapidly now, way more so than we used to be able to. So, and that's been our secret sauce. The secret to our success is my estimator. He's been with us for probably going on 10 years now. But he came from the insurance industry. He didn't know this industry, and we kind of had lunch for him. We knew him, um, and we just had lunch with him, kind of unrelated to the business. And he started just telling us about how he's just so unhappy where he's at, and he needs a change, and blah blah blah. And at the same time, we're talking about hiring an estimator, and we were just joking with him. We're like, well, shit. Well, I actually wasn't there at the time at this first meeting. It was my brother and him. My brother's like, well, why don't you just come work for us? And they kind of just, it was a joke, just laughed about it, obviously, because it was, industries couldn't be any further apart, right? Well, and then he called my brother and I said, hey, I was thinking, I would be interested in possibly trying to go down that road and work for you guys. He's like, I'm so unhappy where I'm at, like, and I'm so desperate for change. I'd be willing to just take that leap of faith, And my brother started thinking about it and they called me. He's like, let me run something by you. I was like, what's that? He's like, what do you think about hiring Carl? I was like, Carl Bruning? He's like, yeah. I was like, you mean the Carl that knows nothing about our industry? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I just think that, and this kind of goes back to what I said about the personality traits and you know, he goes, I just think he'd be a great fit for us. I was like, well, what do you mean a great fit? Like, I was like, how are we going to get him up to speed, and train him? He's like, well, I don't know. He's like, let's just take a gamble. Like, I think let's just sit with him. Or he's like, why don't you just meet me with him and sit with him? Let's have a talk and then go from there. So we did. And I was totally not for it at first. They were trying to convince me, and I was pretty much a hard no. I was like, this is just a terrible idea. Well, fast forward, a couple weeks later, they just kept kind of pushing. My brother just kept pushing out. He had a feeling, right? And my brother's kind of the one that was, I was kind of more reserved and wanted to just systematically do things. He was the one that just take more of a leap of faith, right?
Mhm.
So he's like, I don't know, I just got a gut feeling. He's like, I think we should do this. So he finally convinced me. I said, all right, I'm on board. Let's do this. So we hired him, and we single-handedly had to train him from scratch, from and teach him everything. And it was a long process, but it wasn't an arduous process by any means, though, because we had fun doing it, right? I mean, he was good people, we were good people. He just fit like, our mold, and we really had fun doing it. We really had fun teaching him. And now he's basically the head of our estimating department, and he knows the craft. Like, we taught he better know the craft. We taught him everything that we know. Everything I had, I poured in my heart and soul into him, and he was one of the best hires that we ever had. But taking a guy just completely from a different industry, and especially going into estimating, and our estimating is very difficult in steel erection. We have so many different tasks. Um, and I'll touch on that a little bit just so the audience could get a kind of a idea of how difficult a steel erection estimator is. So let's compare it to like a drywall company, right? You got so many sheets of drywall, you got so much, square footage of taping and mudding to do. You know how many sheets you have to buy. It's easy to bid it. It's basically square footage and the number of sheets you could install in a day. It's pretty cut and dry, right? Even electricians, let's get to electricians. It gets a little more complex, right? But they got, they got a certain, how many switches do we have? How many junction boxes do we have? How many linear feet of wire do we have to pull? How much piping do we have to pull? It's just, they could do all that by square footage or by linear foot, or, the number of junction boxes or whatever. And there's estimating software for all that, all the different trades out there. Steel erection is kind of the dinosaur. Like there's no software out there. There's actually a guy that did create some software. We tried it out, but now he's actually revamped it a little bit. We might go back down that road with him, but we're still waiting to where we got an AI piece of software where we could kind of expedite our bidding process by using AI, by doing automatic beam counts and stuff in the and there's things out there that could do the counting for us and figure out how many columns, how many beams, things of that nature. But we have so many different tasks, drilling, angles to install, different types of welding connections, bolting connections. It goes on and on and on. So my bidding list of tasks that I have is over 300 tasks. So
Wow.
it's really difficult to create a piece of software around that. But um, so it was a steep learning curve, but it paid off. It paid off so tremendously. Um, and then we've done the same thing with now my two project managers, the same thing. Both of them took them. Um, they did not have experience in my industry, and it just hired them solely on the fit, their personality, and their ambition, and just integrity is a big thing for me. I lead with integrity. I treat my people very well. I believe that's one of the most important things is is to, respect your people and, you know, and do right by them, I mean, let's face it, we're nothing without our people, right?
Hmm.
And that's the way I like to treat my people. I like to, make that known that, hey, we need you. And when you're doing a great job for us, we really appreciate it, right? So, and that's the type of people I look for, is the type of people that will, play into that and high integrity and just, and that's the culture we have around here. So that we've had just a ton of success. But um, like I said, we have a great team now. I have a guy that's dedicated to our AISC certification as well, and he basically makes sure that we're running a tight ship and everything's aligned and we're doing things the way we're supposed to do. I got my project managers. I got my estimator. We're looking to hire a second estimator, like right now, as soon as possible. And I have 10 foremen. I just promoted one of my foremen to a superintendent role, and he's now doing all the scheduling for us, which is not an easy task. It sounds easy to do the scheduling, but thing about the scheduling is you have to deal with a bunch of ironworker personalities, a bunch of union ironworker personalities, and that's another whole subject, going down that road. It's ironworkers are a different breed of people. There's some good guys, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely some tough personalities to deal with. So
I love it, man. Dino, dude, it's interesting. This platform allows people to kind of come and share their story. And that's just one of the visions I had in 2020 when the pandemic hit and I was seeing my buddies in restaurants and different industries, have a tough time through that time period. But the way you've gone from fish out of water to back in the water right now during this conversation, and I could see how, man, the element of how you have spent 30 something years in this business is very apparent to me. You're sharing the insights, right? The background of getting someone who wasn't even part of your industry now is such a key component and key person in your company. What great values of nuggets and Go for Show channel and Go for Show community. You know, listening to the last 5, 7 minutes of what Dino shared is such an incredible story for any type of industry that you're in. Taking a chance more on character and integrity, learning someone that you had been doing business with from a different industry, bringing them into your company and developing them. Now you have someone for life, right? And that's a really, really cool feeling. It's one thing that maybe money can't buy, right? And the feeling that Dino has with his brother having built a company that could bring those people into the vision of your company is pretty awesome. So, one of the ways that we could talk probably for 6 hours, man. I feel that I might have to do a total different Go for CO blue collar segment because I think it's such a cool industry, and I don't know it because I've never had that I guess talent for it, but it's such a cool industry to learn about, and I think the world is recognizing that it's so valuable to have our blue collar brothers and sisters because as much as technology has advanced things, and like you said, you're even working on some workflow automation things, some things that can help you. There's no robot right now that's going to be erecting steel beams to build data centers or those types of things. So it's such a valuable trade, and I hope that if a young person in high school is thinking about a career, man, what a great company that you can come work for with Dino's team and all they've been able to do. So one of the things that we do is we end our podcast with CEO. So C is for client experience. E is for engagement, and I'll share with you a little bit on engagement. And O is for operational excellence. But when you think about even just like a 30 or 60-second snippet from your mind and what you've been able to build over 30 years, what do you believe is the value proposition of people doing business with DePasquale erectors and crane? What is that value proposition from a client experience?
I think one of the most important aspects that we bring to the table is our problem solving abilities. Our clients could trust us, the general contractors and superintendents, they could trust us because when things go bad, you know, a lot of people could run a company when things are going good, right? everything's going smoothly. It's everything's all like, roses and sunshine. It's what really makes leaders great is when how you deal with adversity and what do you do when things go bad. And I would say one of my superpowers is really problem solving and not running away from problems, right? Problems are going to happen. As well as we run our company, we still, my foremen still make mistakes. I mean, I still make mistakes. But it's how we handle those mistakes, right? So, number one, we have systems to deal with those mistakes, and we have ways to deal with that are in a systematic way. Number one. Number two, we're a people person. People, we're it's the relationships that you need to really hold on to, right? So, pick up the phone. If there's a problem, I mean, I might not even be involved in the project. I got my project manager that's handling the project from start to finish, and nobody even heard from me, you know, except for when I was negotiating the contract, right? And it could be if it's a bigger project, it could be 6 months later, and we run into this big, hurt, let's say something happens, and that's where I step in. I'm a people person, and I like to, step in and handle problems if need be. My project managers, they can handle problems, don't get me wrong, and most of the time they do. But if it needs to escalate to where I feel like I need to get involved, I'll be the first one to pick up the phone, and I'll call my customer, and I'll say, hey, listen, I heard of the problem that's going on, and they filled me in on a little bit of background, and I'm like, why not? And I'll ask them, why don't you tell me from your side, what's going on, and then we'll see if we can work through this, and they'll tell me, what their thoughts are and how we arrived at the problem or whatever, and then I'm like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get to work on the solution. If I got to send a crew out there tomorrow at 6 a.m., if we got to work this weekend, whatever we need to do to fix this, especially if it was our fault. Sometimes it's not our fault, right? But I think that's where I even add more value is even if it's not our fault, but there's a problem that the project has, I like to try to help be involved in the solution, right? If I'm able to. And I think that's where we kind of shine is we're definitely team players, and if the project's suffering and maybe our scope is delayed or something because there's a problem or whatever, I'm like, hey, what can I do to help? I'll be willing to come to the site. We want to have a meeting of minds where we all put our minds together and try to brainstorm and come up with some solutions here. But if it is my company's problem, I basically tell them, hey, we're going to get to work right now on rectifying the situation. Like, I don't care what I got to do. And that's what we do. We really just throw the kitchen sink at it. And I learned this from one of my mentors, a steel fabricator that's very successful, been in the industry for going on close to 50 years now. He's in his upper 80s and he's still working to this day. He's just a workaholic. And he said, he's like, I'll work till the day I die until I can't work anymore. He's like, and I'm afraid that when I do stop working, I am going to die.
Mhm.
So, but
Wow.
great guy. And, I get coffee from him with him from time to time, and we do business together. But he told me early on, and it resonated with me. He's like, if you really want to, survive in this business and shine in this business, you gotta, when there's an issue or whatever, you got to face it head on. You can't run from your problems. And he's like in the time the most important time and I've been doing this ever since many, many years now. He's like, the time that you want to show up for your customer is when they really need you. He's like, and that's when things go south. He's like, when things go bad, he's like, you're the face of the organization. He's like, that's when you show up. That's when you pick up the phone. That's when you show up on site. He's like, that's when you do whatever it takes to fix that problem and fix it head on. He's like, and that's the single best piece of advice I could give you. And I think that's probably the single biggest factor that kind of moved the needle for my company. Because think about it. If a general contractor could trust a steel erector, we're a vital part of the project, right? That nothing happened. We're one of the first trades out there. Until that steel goes up, the carpenters can't come in. Sometimes the bricklayers that come after us. You name it, windows, interiors, like everything. Everything follows us. So we're a critical piece of it. So if you got a general contractor that says, hey, DePasquale Steel, you know, I know that I could count on Dino. Like, I know that he's going to handle it. Even if things go bad, they're my guys. They're the guys I could count on. They're the guys I trust. So that doesn't mean I'm going to win every job with them just because of the relationship. I mean, price is still a big factor, right? You got to be the low number or close to the low number. But I've won many, many jobs where I wasn't the low number, but it was a difficult project. And they said, you know what, those are our guys. Like, I don't want a headache of dealing with the guy with the low number. I want DePasquale because I know that, they proved to me over and over again that they can handle it. So I think that's our one of the biggest keys to our success.
Well, brother, that's a beautiful way to put a bow on something that you've worked your ass off for 30 years to do, more than 10,000 hours, as they say, to build an expertise. What a really cool, like I said, bow on the point of client experience, because that's what they get dealing with you guys. So, the second question is E for engagement, and this one's kind of an interesting one. Basically, it challenges you, the guest, right, to share with us, how should people think about interacting with Dino? Like, are you a baseball guy? Do you like to go to events? Are you like just to chill and have a whiskey and a cigar? Do you like to break bread? Are you a big, you're Italian, so I'm sure you like to eat. What are some of the ways that you engage best with your vendors, your clients, your associates, your teammates, your family? Tell us a little bit of that secret, because it's cool to hear from our guests how they like to engage.
So family, I'm Italian, as you mentioned, and breaking bread is definitely. I grew up breaking bread with my family, and we had, that's what's home for us, right? Like that's what our comfort is like having a great meal, a glass of wine together. So I could really relate to that, and I've related, really connect with some customers like in that way. But going back to family, I mean, we started a little bit later in life. Me and my wife, I have two sons, 7 and 9, going on 8 and 10, and man, they're my buddies. That's my life is those kids, and I coach most of their sports. They're in baseball. They're in baseball, soccer, basketball. Uh, that's the main ones for now, but I coach a lot of their sports, and I really like to connect with my customers on family. Like a lot of us have kids. A lot of us have, travel sports is a big thing nowadays. We could like relate to that, but I really like to bond with my customers over things like that, like real things, right? We can only talk about business so much, but I think it's really important to like just like step back. I mean, I even do this in times when I'm actually on a business meeting, or on a business call or whatever. I like to just try to look for an opportunity to like step away from, the business side if the conversation lends itself to that, and just, ask him a question like, hey, how was your weekend? Did you, and especially if I know something about him, right? Did your son have a game this weekend? How'd it go? Blah, 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 so, and I think that's great, because that's what's important to me is family and kids, and that's outside of the business, that's all I want to do. I mean, I live for my family, and we have so much fun. We love traveling with the kids. I mean, we actually prefer to go on vacation with the kids than try to take our solo vacations. I mean, obviously a healthy marriage, you need that time away, but they're our buddies. We have fun. I mean, we just love being around, and my wife's the same way. We just love hanging around our kids. They're fun. They have fun with us. We have fun with them. So we're getting a little bit older. So we live kind of vicariously through the boys. So,
I
but I
love it.
think that helps me connect with the customers like on that in those ways.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's many layers to the onion, right? And there's ways to connect. I talk about in the book: faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, right? And those 5 Fs, if you have them right, you understand the categories that those are and how you place them in your life and what importance they are, and ultimately finance or business. That's kind of the same thing. Plays a role, but it's not everything that we're all about, right? So it's cool that you have that perspective, that groundedness, and the ability to coach. I recently coached my fifth grade, now sixth grade basketball coach for my daughter. Nobody had volunteered at the school, so I just volunteered. I'm more of a soccer guy all my life, and it's been a cool experience to kind of see, seven or eight girls not even know how to shoot a basket, to now have some form a year and a half later, have some speed, have some camaraderie. I'm getting chills because there was a couple games where they took, and they didn't even want coach in the huddle. They took their own huddle. They started being like, "Yeah, we're gonna get this," and it's girls, so it's a little bit different than boys. But being a girl dad myself, it's really that experience of kind of teaching them and guiding them through. So it's pretty cool that you had that. And you've been able to do that with your kids. So, last one is operational excellence, and you've mentioned a couple times workflow automation. AI is touching every industry in different ways, not necessarily eliminating things, but maybe adding some speed, some efficiencies, and those types of things. What are two or three different systems you use throughout the years? ERP systems, these types of things that you use at your firm.
Yeah, so I've gone down the road of many pieces of software. Software is kind of a headache because it's what I have trouble finding is one piece fits all, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's trouble with today's software, right? Is every software company out there wants to they might start at one segment, but they want to just even the ERP systems now they want to do everything. They want to handle estimating and on-screen takeoffs to project management to field documentation, but they can't. They're not good at everything, right? But and the problem is the cost starts rising and rising and rising. My perfect world is I got one reasonably priced software for this, one for that, one for that, where they're all great. So that's my pain point. However, um, I've really recently just kind of got away from using the ERP. I mean, we still use the ERP because it just organizes everything and everything's under one roof, right? With the financing and all that stuff. Um, but now I'm leaning really, really heavily on AI. I created projects in Claude where it builds out it spits out RFIs for me, my proposals. I mean, you name it. I kind of got a project for every little component, which in the past I would basically create all that from my ERP software, but now I'm literally just having AI handle that. So, I just upload some sample proposals. I give it some context of like, what I'm looking for. I put like my standard exclusions and things of that nature in there. And then, when I want a proposal, I just kind of have a format where I just give it the information and boom, it spits it out for us. Does the branding, the whole nine yards. And it saves us just a ton of time. Because even in the ERP, using AI is probably twice as fast as if I went in and built up a proposal in the ERP software. So that's kind of what I've been spending the most time with is just leaning heavily on AI, and it's really saved me a tremendous amount of time. But for the one piece of software that I got to give the most credit to is called the Raken app. That's our daily daily reports that our foremen do. It's a great program. It's probably the best daily reporting software out there. But that's where you know, they write down basically what they worked on for the day, give a summary of the tasks that they did, but it could track our progress. We could go ahead and put cost codes in there, and then the foreman, when they're working on different tasks, they assign it to different task codes, and it'll track how the project is trending, how we're doing on this scope, how we're doing that scope. But as far as labor hours, it gives us charts and graphs so we could see how the project is trending at any certain point in the project. But all our safety paperwork is all electronic through that app. If God forbid somebody gets hurt, we got all our injury reporting forms, our supervisor form, all that stuff is in there. So, and then another new piece that I've been using is I'm sure you might have heard of it, but the Notion.
Mm.
Notion is basically a very versatile piece of software that's you could use it pretty much for anything, any industry. But so I'm working on building out a big project management hub inside of a Notion. I already built out my AISC certification hub in there. So, and that's, just my quality control manual is, I think, 65 pages. So in Notion, you could break it down into, you got your table of contents and you click on the table of contents and it opens up that section. And let's say you want to go, to chapter 2, or you want to jump to chapter, 15, you just click chapter 15, boom, you're in chapter 15. And then there's links, hyperlinks inside there where it could open up documents. So Notion's really been a game changer for us. The next added layer to Notion is creating like agents inside of Notion that will basically do work for us, like in the background.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the next wave of technology that I want to build out to kind of take us to that next level. I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve as much as I can, but so that's kind of where we're at.
Well, look at this, man. The erection steel guy, hard labor is turned tech savvy pro, man. I love it, man. What a cool experience. And part of the journey, man. It's you really developed a way to, go from in the business to on the business and teach forward some of the talent that you've been able to acquire. Like you said, the insurance guy that had no visual initial understanding of your industry now is one of your top guys, and you keep on duplicating that effort, and you'll have bench strength, you'll have, succession, you'll have so many different things. And who knows, maybe one of the boys, or both the boys take over as well with whoever your brother has as well. So awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Go Show channel. I know we went a little bit longer than expected, but man, what a great conversation. We could probably talk 3, 4 hours of this industry and what you've been able to learn and be a part of. So what if somebody, checks this out and goes, man, I really like this, snippet that Dino talked about. And I know that we didn't get a chance to go too much into the coaching side. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about the coaching that you're doing. What are some of the best ways to get a hold of you, to connect with you, to do business with you?
Yeah, you could find, I'm actually building out a new website for DePasquale Steel, but you could go to DePasqualeCraneRental.com if you got any crane needs. But as far as my teaching and teaching other erectors, you could go to DinoDePasquale.com, and I got like a hub there where I have
Spell it
a
out
lot of
for him because, DePasquale is, not the easiest thing to spell. So go ahead.
so it's going to be DinoDePasquale.com, DinoDePasquale.com.
Awesome, brother. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much again for being a part of the Go Show channel. And man, we're looking forward to, we'll have you on again. I think it's such a great industry. I think it's building more and more momentum. And it's kind of cool that you've adopted some of this technology and AI and tech stack and understanding, but yet the root of it is that you're building America. You're building real things for human beings to be able to use and be a part of in buildings and all this type of stuff. So super exciting to have you on, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, I'd love to do it again in the future.
Awesome, bro.